Welcome to the start of yet another biro piece. I have to say that I'm really excited about this. Two main reasons. One is the view, because this was from a walk up in the Lake District that we did a couple of years ago. We climbed very high indeed, so high in fact we were in the clouds. The weather at that point really wasn't nice. Visibility was down to about a centimetre from our eyeballs, which was a bit freaky actually, because you can understand why people just walk off the edge of a cliff, because when you're up at these viewpoints people walk right up to the edge, obviously, because they want to see this amazing view, which means you end up with a footpath that leads you right over the edge of the cliff, and when you can't see, you can understand why you might find yourself following the wrong cliff and then being in the wrong place at the wrong time, as in down the bottom. Anyway, we didn't do that. We came close to luck. Fortunately we had sat nav, so we were okay, but as we were descending after this, we saw this amazing vista open up before us. It was truly breathtaking, and I've wanted to do a piece for it for a while, because it was about 2 years ago, and I think the other reason I'm excited about it is the scale of this. I think it deserved to be a big scale. It's 140 centimetres wide and 100 centimetres high, well, otherwise known as a metre high. By far the biggest biro piece I've ever done. So I'm really looking forward to this. It's going to be fab, and I hope you enjoy it too. I'm just having a quick break from the time lapse, because I thought it was about time I sort of maybe showed a bit more of the actual technique of what I'm doing. What I'm sort of doing at the moment is putting this hill right in the background in. So this sort of line here, the sort of the furthest away line, which is where you really get that soft tone that you wouldn't think you could get with biro. So that's the bit that I'm going to sort of show you what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. Okay, so I've now sort of zoomed right in on the right hand side of the piece. So this is the edge of the canvas, so you can't actually see that, but the edge of the canvas is probably about sort of 5 or 6 centimeters away from here, and as I said, this is the sort of the hill that's furthest away, so the softest of what you can see. And essentially the way that you do this is by using the edge of the pen. So you sort of scribble with the edge of the pen, which just gives you a very soft tone, and you actually have to be quite specific, because you find out that the ink sort of comes out in a bit of a sort of random way, so sometimes the ink will stick and sometimes it won't when you're using the edge. I don't know if you can see that, how much of the edge I'm using. So, and it also tends to follow the line of the canvas itself. The random way that this works can be quite beneficial because you get some texture in there, but sometimes you have to, like, there's a little sort of T there that's not got any ink on it, so I'll home in on that and just very gently knock that back so that it's no longer stand out and becomes part of the overall picture. And the sort of the fact that you can see some bits more than others, or bits are darker, adds to the overall sort of soft feel. And this bit down the bottom here, further along here, I've sort of left it lighter at the bottom where it meets the horizon, but here I'm going to do something different, because it's important to switch things up if things get too uniform. So the horizon line of this stretches all the way across the whole canvas, and if it all just looks the same,
and done in the same way. It just looks too uniform. Nature isn't that uniform, so I'll take some of the darkness right down to the next level, the next range of hills, and almost blur it right in, so it stops everything looking a bit too repetitive or a bit too samey, and that really adds quite a lot of realism to these sort of pieces if you can vary that. Here I am, putting on loads of ink to try and get some really dark shadows, so you can see how brutal you've got to be really to get the dark patches. Mostly it's rocks to do and grass, but the ferns are definitely difficult. They've got ferns crossing over each other, and they're quite fine in detail. My job, if you like, as an artist is to sort of try and capture that sort of sense of amazement when you see a view like this. And as I've known, and probably you have as well, is you go to somewhere like this, you see something like this, you think, oh, I've got to take a photo. This is going to be amazing. It is amazing. You take the photo, you get it home, you have a look, and you think, oh, it just doesn't capture it. So my job is to try and actually capture that feeling, and create that sense of amazement. Not to outstrip the reality, just to actually capture it more than a photo can. Photos don't tend to capture the spirit or the soul of a place, I don't think. Well, I say that, it sounds like I might be being quite harsh to photographers, because many photographers can capture the heart and the spirit of the place, definitely. I can't really, and I always feel that art is superior at doing that, but then I'm going to say that, aren't I? I'm an artist after all. So constantly referring to the reference, trying to get some of this detail in. The thing is with ferns is that they're sort of ferns within ferns, if you like, so you've got sort of little leaves coming off the little leaves, which makes them very beautiful, but not necessarily all that easy to do. So I'm just sort of putting those leaflets, or whatever the technical term for them is, in here. And then trying to get that dark shade behind it. It's always interesting with trying to get that contrast, trying to balance between the drama of the light and shade and overdoing it, because you can easily think at one point you're looking at something and you think it needs to be a lot darker, so you really go for it, and then you look and you think, oh, I've made that too dark now, which is quite easy to do. So I always think it's much better being careful, going cautiously, particularly when you're working something like Bic, because essentially you can add but you can't take away. So you really need to work hard to get it, make sure you've got it right. And again, just sort of going round, putting hints of these little things, because the only idea really is to make it so that when you look at it and you see it, you get the impression of these little tiny leaflets. So so that you look at it and you sense that they're there. They don't necessarily have to be there in every single case, but you get a feeling of them. So that when you see it, the brain fills in the rest. When I was at art college, I ended up wanting where I was at the time. I was wanting to create reality and really capture everything, so that when you couldn't see the art, the marks of the art, so that you just looked at it and you could not tell that it was a painting. So the reality sort of overtook the act of making the art. Now I sort of think that it's sad to do that in a way, because it is a piece of art, and the marks that you make should form part of that. So I'm now getting that contrast coming in. It's going to be quite extreme at the moment because I've just left the fern completely blank, so it's white, which it won't be. I will knock that back. But I can use that initially just to make sure I've got things right. And when I was at college, I remember it was accepted practice to trace things initially. So when you do your drawing, you sort of trace it off the photograph, and I sort of fell in with this initially, but I quite quickly swore to myself that I would never trace again, because I was finding that my ability to draw was being lost. My ability, the brain is a sort of a muscle, and you train it in different ways. And because I wasn't using those parts of the brain to check perspective, measurements, and do things like that, because I was just using the shortcut, and it is a lot quicker when you trace. I was losing the ability to draw, which scared the life out of me when I realised. So I then swore that I would never ever trace again. And I haven't. I have to admit, I have occasionally used projections onto these big canvases, but only when I've drawn the picture first, because it does save a huge amount of time. Right, so there's that fern. I'm pretty happy with it. So now what I've got to do, actually I think I'll darken this bit up a little bit more. Okay, right, so that's essentially, I'll just sort of scribble over it in a softer way to sort of knock that back. This is in an intensely shaded area underneath these steps and the rocks. So I need to go back quite a way, and it's going into the darkness, so we need to sort of have that feeling of it emerging out of that shadow. And generally speaking, when you're using things like this, you should never generally have flat tone. A little bit of texture and going from dark to light always helps with reality, because nature doesn't tend to do uniform. Now I need to darken up into some of these. Little bits I was thinking that it was done, but I need to go deeper into these V shapes. Yeah, okay. I think that's about it. We'll swap back to the time lapse. there we have it, the finished picture. 76 hours that's taken me from beginning to get to this point. There may be a few little tweaks and changes I might want to do, so it may take a little bit longer than that in the end, but 76 hours is what we're looking at so far. I'm behind the camera lens this time because the picture is so big. I can take you on a tour of it, which is the first time I've ever been able to do that really, so I'll take you off the tripod. I think the main two sort of features of this is the wall on the right hand side there, which sort of runs through and into the picture and wends away and joins up with this hill line over here. And then the style, or really a ladder, which takes you over that wall and then takes you down through the path and kind of compositionally joins up with this lake in the background here. There are a couple of other features I wouldn't mind showing you, particularly up close. Mainly these ferns down here, which did take me a long time. I like a challenge, and they were definitely challenging, but I think I like it in the end. And just so you know that this little bit here, this sort of path of light through it, is something that they do quite ingeniously, where they build a wall but they leave a little hole at the bottom, a little gap for dogs and maybe other animals to go through. But there we have it. I really hope that it's captured some sense of that awe that you feel when you view this kind of scene, because that's really what I'm looking for. That's what my work is always trying to do, capture that, the actual feeling you get when you see views like this. So thank you very much indeed for all your time, and I'll see you soon.